righty. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, just assuming everything's recording here on my laptop, which I will show you. I don't know if that will show up on the camera. It'll mess with my tracking, but that is the OG MacBook Air, baby. I did it. I pulled the trigger. All EDC, compact, slim form factor, lightweight, yet powerful content creation laptop roads lead to MacBook Air. I'm sorry to say, just all things considered, it's just, again, this is just my opinion as one lone content creator here on my podcast, Geek Therapy Radio podcast. But if you are looking for, let me rephrase that. I was looking for something that was not very expensive, and I'll explain that in a second. That was not very expensive, but was fully capable of real solid content creation, both video editing and obviously audio editing, podcast editing. Something that had great all-day battery life, something with a good screen, good speakers, a good built-in microphone, all the things that a content creator would need. Why did that turn off? Come on. There, maybe that'll be better. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm in my car right now recording, of course, and the overhead dome lights just went off, probably to save the battery. But anyways, yeah, what I wound up getting was a 2020 first generation M1 MacBook Air. I got it with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it was just a shade on Amazon. It was just a shade over $520. I think it was $526. Used, refurbished, good condition. M1 MacBook Air with 16 gigabytes of RAM. This is before the M2 refresh. Why did I do that? It wasn't just because of the cost. You could get a used M2 for $100 or $200 more. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive for an M2 and an M3, obviously. But why did I specifically go for the first generation M1 MacBook Air? First and foremost, like many around this kind of tech space will tell you, the Apple kind of, in a good way, backed themselves in a corner a little bit with the first generation of M processors because they are so good. It's becoming difficult to convince their own consumer base to upgrade from M1 now to M4 and what have you. So that is reason number one why I went with a MacBook Air, a first generation M1 MacBook Air, was that the processor, even in the year 2025, is still absolutely crusher when it comes to content creation. So that was rule number one. Two, it was the battery life. I needed the all-day battery life. This does not have the battery life of my 16-inch MacBook Pro, of course. It doesn't have the brute force horsepower of the M1 Pro chip inside of my 16-inch MacBook Pro, but the battery does last all day. That is used. This is 5 years old. When I got this, the first thing I did was look at the battery health to see what kind of capacity remains on this battery, and it's 92%. After 5 years, this battery still has 92% of its original capacity. I think when this came out, they were touting an all-day battery life of, best case scenario, 18 hours. I have not tested that. I have not tested if it's 16 and a half hours or 17 hours or whatever it is now at 92% of original capacity. But I can tell you just from working on it day to day, battery life is not an issue. Even when I'm editing video. Editing video is a more power-intensive task, obviously. There's no way you're getting 15, 16 hours of battery life while you're editing video. Just flat out, it's not going to happen. But every part of me says we'll do 4, 5, 6 hours, maybe even 7 hours of light video editing. For my needs, for my use case, minimum 5 hours of just straight up video editing. I have not verified this. I have not tested this. You can look around other YouTube channels to see people who have done deeper dives into the actual battery life during heavy content creation and gaming, and then versus just watching videos. But this has not left me stranded. This is not leaving me kind of searching for a wall charger in the middle of the day. I've had this thing for about a week, and I've been using it all the time. I was a little bit nervous about going from my M1 Pro 16-inch MacBook Air to this, or MacBook Pro to this 13-inch MacBook Air, but I'm reaching for this in the past week. Every situation, every kind of video editing situation, every content creating situation, every work situation, emails, writing, typing, whatever, M1. I've been going for the MacBook Air because it is so small, because it's so lightweight. But speaking of small, the screen on the M1 MacBook Air is smaller than the M2s and onward. The M2 MacBook Airs, I believe, have like 13.8-inch screens. This one is 13.6 inches or 13.3 inches, somewhere around there. Even with my eyes, it has not been a deterrent. Sure, a 16-inch MacBook Pro screen is going to be way bigger, or my 17.3-inch or a 17H screen is going to be way more real estate. But for a compact laptop on the go that can do it all, I am not complaining about this screen. The screen obviously is not mini LED or whatever that my 16-inch MacBook Pro is, but it still looks great. The screen still looks more than great. Anybody looking at this, it's kind of weird because looking at like a 16-inch MacBook Pro screen or any MacBook Pro screen or an iPad Pro screen, you're like, this is the cream of the crop. This is the best that screens get. Maybe perhaps OLED gets a little bit better, but I mean, you're talking about some of the best displays in the world in these high-end flagship devices, not just with Apple, but with everything. I mean, my Galaxy S24 Ultra right here has one of the best, if not the best, phone screens on the planet. And so going from looking at, in my TV at home, I have two TVs at home that are OLED, LG OLED TVs. Going from those cream of the crop, best of the best technology screens to looking at this first-gen MacBook Air, I think it's just LCD screen, I have no complaints. When you watch reviews and they say, oh, the screen isn't technically as good as a MacBook Pros or whatever, that can be a bit misleading because in real life, the screens on the MacBook Airs are still absolutely fabulous. Same with the speakers. The speakers in the 16-inch MacBook Pro, obviously, blow any other laptop sound system out of the water. I'm sorry, this is not an Apple fanboy thing or a PC fanboy thing. Like I just mentioned, I got Apple and PC and Windows and Mac OS. I use all of it all the time. Android, I use all of it. MacBook Pro speakers are the best in the business. And I would say that even the built-in microphones, in my experience, are the best in the business. One reason I went with the first-gen M1 MacBook Air is that the speakers are still top firing. I mentioned this in a previous video, I believe, before I actually got this first-gen MacBook Air, but one of the reasons I'm okay with going with a first-gen M1 MacBook Air was that the speakers were top firing as opposed to M2s and so on that bury the speakers underneath the keyboard. They still sound great. I'm sure I've not heard an M2 or M3 MacBook Air. I'm sure they still sound great for this form factor. These speakers still sound fantastic. They're not as good, quote unquote, as like a 16-inch MacBook Pro's speakers, but they are still, there's probably no other device that I own. I've got what is my Zephyrus G14? I've got a Zephyrus G14 with an RTX 3060 in it. Good speakers in it, but nothing compares, in my experience, to speakers in a MacBook. And that's one of those little things about a content creation computer is the sound needs to be good, the display needs to be good, and in my case, what you're listening to right now, the built-in microphone needs to be good. The built-in microphone for the MacBook Air is, in fact, underneath the left speaker grill, so that's why I'm favoring speaking into the left speaker grill a little bit off axis, because that's the main microphone in a MacBook Air and also in MacBook Pros, as I've demonstrated in the past. So all these amount to, in the trackpad, I hate trackpads. Usually I severely dislike trackpads, but I noticed something the other day. I was talking to my buddy, who was talking about he was shopping for mice, for wireless mices. And I said, I just realized the other day that I was using my MacBook Air here, and I have my Logitech Pebble mouse in my backpack with me all the time, and I got it out and I had it next to the MacBook Air, and after 4 hours of video editing on battery, by the way, I realized I never touched the Pebble, the Logitech Pebble wireless mouse. I was just using the trackpad the whole time on the MacBook Air, which is technically is it a smaller trackpad than the 16-inch MacBook Pro? Because it looks massive on here. But while a trackpad, it was never going to be as good as a dedicated mouse. The fact that I went 4 hours and I had a wireless mouse next to me and forgot about it and was just using the trackpad to edit video in DaVinci Resolve is a testament to how good the trackpad is. And it means that in a pinch, you maybe don't need to carry the wireless mouse with you with a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro. I always will, but it wouldn't be the end of the world if I got somewhere and I needed to sit down and work on something and I realized, oh, I don't have my wireless mouse, the trackpad. Apple trackpads, credit where credit's due. Apple trackpads, I have never on a PC ever even come close in my experience, personal experience, to something as good as the trackpad on Apple devices, especially modern Apple devices with the haptic feedback and everything. The keyboard's great on this one too. I got to start wrapping it up because I'm recording in my car. I got to go up to the office. I'm at work here. But yeah, I had the Asus VivoBook 14 with an OLED panel. Had that for a few weeks, sent it back to Amazon, and I was like, you know what? Like I said, all roads lead to used MacBook Air, and that's where I'm at today. Couldn't be happier. Somebody stopping me on the street. What is the best compact portable laptop that you can recommend for, under $600, around $500? Used MacBook Air. 100% used M1 Macbook Air, absolutely all the way, because you can get it for around $500 now with the 16 gigabytes of RAM. And if you're a serious content creator, not that the 8 gigabytes can't get you through what Mac OS and M1 chips do, M chips do with way less RAM is crazy. So you can do a whole lot. You can video edit, you can 4K video edit, you can 6K video, you can watch an 8K timeline with 8 gigabytes of RAM on a MacBook Air. But more RAM is always better. Makes things faster, snappier. You can have more effects going on. And they're so cheap now. So why not go for a 16 gigabyte RAM MacBook Air, M1 MacBook Air for less than $600? This is so cool. Like one of the best things about M2 and M3 and M4 chips coming out is that the M1s just get cheaper and cheaper, and they're still baller. They probably won't have the software support as long as M2s and M3s updates and things like that. But that's to be seen. M1s are so good, it wouldn't surprise me if Apple extends the support of M1 devices beyond. I think their desktop Mac Pros or whatever they are, with like 192 gigs of RAM, the big cheese grater towers, those are still on M1 Max chips. M1 Pros and M1 Max chips. They're still M1s in their flagship $7,000 devices. So wouldn't surprise me if Apple supports M1 devices for a few more years beyond like what they typically did with, Intel chips for sure. But that's it. I really got to run upstairs. Thank you so much for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast or watching here on YouTube. I adjusted the settings of my Osmo Pocket 3 here to hopefully track me a little bit smoother and less jittery, but we'll see how it works out. This is all an experiment. Geek Therapy Radio podcast started in 2017. It's been an experiment for the last several years. I'm never going to nail it down, but that's in my opinion, one of the kind of beauties of Geek Therapy Radios. I'm constantly tinkering with things. Anyways, talk too much. You are worthy of love. You're worthy of giving love. You're worthy of receiving love. And you are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio today, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.